Watch. The year is 1970. An American rocket crashes in the Mexican desert, and from that moment on, people begin to disappear, one after another. First, a shepherd. Then, an entire family, right in the middle of breakfast. And after them, tourists, students, and journalists. Their belongings are found, their tents stand untouched, but the people themselves are gone. In this area, communications fail, compasses lead nowhere, and technology begins to malfunction. What fell into the zone of silence, and why does it still refuse to release those who enter? On July 11, 1970, at 8:40 a.m. Mountain Time, a research rocket, the Athena RTV re-entry test vehicle, was launched from the Green River Launch Complex in Utah. According to partially declassified U.S. Air Force documents from 2002, the rocket was supposed to follow a ballistic trajectory and land at the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, completing a journey of about 400 miles. From the official mission report, launch executed nominally. The first 7 minutes of flight showed no deviations. In the 8th minute, telemetry indicated a sharp change in course. Correction attempts were unsuccessful. Contact with the rocket was lost in the 11th minute of flight. The rocket was carrying 2 small containers of cobalt-57, a radioactive isotope used in atmospheric research. The total weight of the radioactive material was approximately 2 kilograms. Radar data analysis conducted by specialists at Holloman Air Force Base revealed inexplicable behavior from the rocket. From the technical report, at an altitude of 120,000 feet, the object altered its trajectory by 42 degrees to the south for no apparent reason. Its velocity remained constant, ruling out mechanical failure. The last reliable coordinates were 32 degrees north latitude, 106 degrees west longitude. The estimated impact point, northern Mexico, in the Chihuahuan Desert. Engineer Robert Hamilton, who participated in the investigation, recalled in a 2010 interview, "We checked all possible causes, gyro failure, a programming error, external influence, nothing fit. The rocket behaved as if something had pulled it south." Mexican authorities were notified of the possible crash of an American rocket on their territory through diplomatic channels. A joint search operation began. From the memoirs of Mexican Army Colonel Juan Martinez, who led the search from the Mexican side. The Americans arrived very quickly. 3 helicopters, trucks with strange equipment, men in protective suits. They clearly knew what they were looking for, but they weren't willing to share information. They only said, "We're looking for debris from an experimental rocket." The search was complicated by the vastness of the desert and the lack of precise impact coordinates. The search area covered more than 1,000 square kilometers of difficult terrain. On July 18th, a local shepherd, Jesus Ochoa, discovered a strange object stuck in a sand dune in an area known as the Zona del Silencio, the Zone of Silence, from his statement given to the local police. "I was looking for missing goats when I saw something metallic sticking out of the sand. I got closer. It looked like a large pipe. The sand around it seemed as if it were melted. I tried to call the ranch. The telephone wasn't working. The compass went crazy too. The needle was spinning like a propeller." Ochoa marked the location of the find and returned to the ranch. His message quickly reached the search parties. On July 20th, an American technical group arrived at the location, headed by a NASA representative. To the surprise of many, the group was led by Wernher von Braun himself, the legendary rocket designer and father of the American space program. From the memoirs of his assistant, Ernst Stuhlinger, Dr. von Braun was extremely interested in this incident. He told me, "Ernst, this rocket was not supposed to be there. Something interfered with its flight, and we must understand what." He personally insisted on the trip to Mexico, despite objections from his superiors. The arrival of von Braun turned the routine operation of recovering the fallen rocket into an event of the highest importance. The group discovered the rocket on July 21st. It was located 15 kilometers from Ochoa's ranch in the very heart of the zone of silence. The rocket's condition puzzled the specialists. From the technical report compiled on site, object discovered in a vertical position, submerged 2/3 of its length in the ground. There are no signs of a typical impact, no crater, no scattered debris, no slide marks. It gives the impression that the rocket was carefully placed at this point. The radiation level is normal, which is strange. The containers with cobalt-57 were depressurized, and the isotope should have dispersed, but instruments show only background levels. Where the radioactive material went is unclear. During the work to extract the rocket, the group encountered a series of inexplicable phenomena. From the diary of one of the technicians, July 23rd, the third day of work, radio communication is intermittent. At a distance of more than 100 meters from the rocket, there is complete silence on the airwaves. Compasses are useless. GPS, an experimental military system, shows coordinates that jump within a 5-kilometer radius. Strange behavior from the equipment. 2 bulldozers stalled for no apparent reason 50 meters from the rocket. After being towed beyond the zone, they started up instantly. Some of the guys are complaining of dizziness and disorientation. What began as a simple recovery of a fallen rocket turned into a large-scale operation. By the end of July, more than 200 people were working at the site. From the Logistics Service report, a temporary runway for C-130s was built. Equipment with a total weight of 120 tons was delivered. Temporary structures for personnel were erected. A security perimeter with a radius of 5 kilometers was established. The local population was told it was a military exercise. Mexican journalist Carlos Ramirez, who tried to get into the zone, later wrote, "The scale of the American presence was unprecedented. They built an entire base in the desert in a week. Military trucks were hauling out soil by the ton. What were they looking for besides the rocket?" On July 28th, according to leaked documents, a discovery was made that changed the nature of the operation. The details are still classified, but from fragmented evidence, the following can be pieced together. From the testimony of an anonymous source, a former military translator. While drilling around the rocket at a depth of 15 meters, they hit a cavity. They lowered a camera. Below, there was something like a natural cave, but the walls were melted like glass. And there were imprints. I can't describe them precisely, as if something organic had been pressed into the glass-like rock. Immediately after this discovery, the operation's secrecy level was raised. Mexican personnel were removed from work in the Central Zone. From August 1st to August 10th, an evacuation took place. According to military transport aviation invoices, the following were removed: rocket fragments, 3 tons, soil samples, 280 tons, unidentified artifacts, weight not specified, number of containers, 12. Local residents noted the intense movement of trucks, which operated around the clock. Juan Perez, owner of the nearest ranch. They hauled out half the desert. The trucks went day and night. Some containers were transported with an armed escort. What could be so valuable in sand and rocks? A few years after the operation, disturbing patterns began to emerge. From a 2008 Air Force Medical Service report, of the 207 people who participated in the Athena recovery operation, 43 are currently alive. The average age of death is 52 years. Causes: cancer of various localizations, 60%. Cardiovascular diseases, 20%. Accidents and suicides, 20%. This was a statistically significant increase in mortality compared to a control group. The death rate was especially high among personnel who had worked directly in the Central Zone. On August 15, 1970, the operation was officially completed. From the final report, the Athena rocket has been successfully recovered and evacuated. No radioactive contamination was detected. The cause of the deviation from its course was a probable failure of the navigation system. Recommendation: strengthen quality control of electronic components. This dry conclusion stood in stark contrast to the scale of the operation and the level of resources involved. The first documented disappearance of a person in the rocket's impact zone occurred 4 months after the operation ended. On December 15, 1970, Miguel Rodriguez, a shepherd from Ochoa's ranch, went missing. From the police report, Rodriguez went to look for goats that had strayed from the herd in the direction of the place where the American rocket had fallen in the summer. He did not return by evening. A week-long search yielded no results. Only his hat was found 3 kilometers from the supposed rocket impact site. No signs of a struggle or accident were found. This was only the beginning. Over the next 5 years, within a 20-kilometer radius of the rocket's crash site, another 11 people would disappear without a trace. The authorities would attribute the disappearances to accidents in the desert, animal attacks, or bandits. But the local residents knew, with the arrival of the American rocket, their land had changed. The zone of silence had begun to claim its toll. On March 5, 1975, Rosario Mendoza went to visit her sister, Maria Hernandez, at the Las Flores Ranch, located 20 kilometers from the American rocket's impact site. What she discovered there would set in motion the most mysterious disappearance case in the region's history. From the testimony of Rosario Mendoza given to the Ceballos police: I arrived around 10 a.m. as we had arranged. The gate was open. That's strange. Maria always locked it because of the goats. The yard was silent. Usually, the children run out to greet me. The dogs bark. But here, nothing. I went into the house. Breakfast was on the table: beans, tortillas, coffee. The food was warm, as if it had just been prepared, but there was no one. According to police records, the following people lived at the ranch: Juan Hernandez, 38 years old, head of the family; Maria Hernandez, 35 years old, his wife; Carlos, 14 years old, the eldest son; Rosa, 12 years old, the daughter; and Miguel, 8 years old, the youngest son. The family ran a typical farm for the region. They raised goats, grew beans and corn, and made cheese to sell in Ceballos. According to neighbors, they were hard-working, religious people with no enemies or debts. Police Sergeant Antonio Garcia, who arrived on the scene, conducted the initial inspection. From his report, no signs of a struggle or violence were found. The doors were not forced. The windows were intact. The house is in order. Valuables are in place: a radio receiver, the wife's sewing machine, and savings of 300 pesos in the usual hiding spot under the mattress. Strange details: the entire family disappeared in their house clothes. Outerwear, shoes, everything is in its place. The 2 dogs were found locked in the barn, alive but extremely agitated. 40 goats are wandering the yard, not having been milked for at least a day. The family's truck is on the property, keys in the ignition. On the stove, the remains of breakfast are burnt, but not completely. Conclusion: the family left the house suddenly during breakfast without taking any belongings. By the evening of March 5th, neighbors and relatives had joined the search. They searched all the buildings, the well, and the surrounding area within a 1-kilometer radius. There were no results. From the memories of Pedro Sanchez, a neighbor: we combed every meter, shouting, calling. Juan knew the desert like the back of his hand. He couldn't have gotten lost. And where would they all go together, including the little one? The old-timers said, check near the cursed place where the rocket fell. But the police just waved it off. On March 6th, the search party expanded to 50 people. They used horses and scoured ravines and caves. No traces. On March 8th, a shepherd, Juan Marina, made a strange discovery 5 kilometers from the ranch in the direction of the zone of silence. From the inspection report, footprints were found in a sandy area identified as belonging to the Hernandez family members. The shoe sizes match. Peculiarities. The tracks proceed in a single group close to each other. The direction is strictly northeast, towards the center of the zone of silence. The tracks end abruptly on a rocky patch of ground after 200 meters. There are no return tracks. Note, the character of the footprints is unusual. The stride is even, mechanical, with no signs of fatigue or haste, as if the people were walking in a trance. A week after the disappearance, an important testimony emerged. Carmen Diaz, a resident of a neighboring ranch, said the following. On the evening of March 4th, I saw a strange light over the desert in the direction of the Hernandez ranch. It wasn't like lightning, a steady white glow rising from the ground to the sky. It lasted about 5 minutes. I woke up my husband, but by the time he came out, it was over. He said I imagined it, but I know what I saw. And the dogs howled all night. Not just ours. You could hear them from all around. The police treated the testimony with skepticism, recording it in the report as an unconfirmed observation of an atmospheric phenomenon. By March 15th, the official investigation was considering 3 main theories. First, kidnapping by bandits. Arguments against: no signs of a struggle, valuables left behind, no ransom demand. Second, a family conflict, and they left. Arguments against: good family relations, confirmed by all acquaintances, no prior indications, all property left behind. Third, an accident in the desert. Arguments against: the impossibility of 5 people dying simultaneously without a trace, the head of the family's knowledge of the terrain. Father Medel Herrera, the local priest, conducted his own investigation. His notes, found after his death in 2003, shed light on aspects that were hushed up. March 15th. I spoke with Juan a week before the disappearance. He was worried. He said he had seen strangers near the old rocket crash site. He described them strangely. Tall, blonde, in identical gray clothes. They spoke Spanish, but with an accent he couldn't place. They asked about the nearest ranches, the number of people. Juan answered evasively and left. He didn't see them again, but he felt he was being watched. March 20th. I visited the place where the tracks end. I took holy water and a crucifix with me. At the edge of the rocky area, I felt a strong dizziness. The compass I had with me began to spin. The temperature dropped by 10 degrees in seconds. I stepped back and prayed for an hour. The place is unholy. The investigation revealed a disturbing statistic. Since the rocket crash in 1970, within a 30-kilometer radius, in 1971, 4 people had disappeared. In 1972, 2 people. In 1973, 3 people. In 1974, 3 people. In 1975, before March, 1 person. The Hernandez family brought the count to 18 missing people in 5 years. After the official search was called off, relatives continued to search on their own. Juan's brother, Carlos Hernandez, organized several expeditions into the zone of silence. From his diary, April, 3rd expedition. We reached a place the locals call Los Perdidos, the Lost. A strange area. Complete silence, not even wind. We found an old well abandoned for 100 years. We lowered a rope about 30 meters deep. Esteban volunteered to go down. After 5 minutes, he started screaming for us to pull him back. We pulled him out, pale and trembling. He said there were tunnels at the bottom leading in different directions and a smell like ozone after a thunderstorm. We never went back there. In 1978, a geological expedition from a Texas university was working in the region. Professor James Whitman wrote in a private letter to a colleague, "The locals told us about a family that disappeared in '75. They showed us the place. We took some measurements. The magnetic anomalies are off the charts, but the strangest thing is the radiation level. It's not dangerous, but it's consistently elevated. as if there is still a source of weak radiation here. The connection to the fallen rocket is obvious, but officially, everyone denies it. I advised my students to stay far away from this area. The most inexplicable episode occurred in August of 1975. Rosario Mendoza, who continued to live at her sister's ranch, woke up one morning and found the clothes of all the Hernandez family members neatly folded in the yard. From the follow-up police report, Citizen Mendoza discovered 5 sets of clothing, neatly folded. The clothing has been identified as belonging to the missing persons. The condition is clean and ironed, with no signs of wear. The location is precisely in the middle of the yard, folded in a square. Citizen Mendoza swears that the yard was empty the previous evening. The dogs did not bark during the night. No signs of trespassing were found. The origin of the clothing has not been established. On September 5, 1975, the case of the missing Hernandez family was officially closed. The conclusion: the most probable version is that the family got lost in the desert during a walk and died of dehydration. The bodies have not been found, presumably due to the activity of scavengers and the nature of the terrain. The case is closed for lack of a crime. This conclusion ignored all the strange details: the warm breakfast, the tracks leading in one direction, and the subsequent appearance of the clothes. The Las Flores Ranch was abandoned. Rosario Mendoza moved to Mexico City to live with relatives, but the disappearances in the zone continued. October 1975, a truck driver went missing. December 1975, 2 hunters disappeared. February 1976, a young couple went missing. By the end of the 70s, the zone of silence had earned a sinister reputation. Locals avoided it. Tourists began to arrive, seeking thrills. Some of them also joined the list of the missing. In 2010, the grandson of Juan Hernandez, named after his grandfather, visited the abandoned ranch. In the basement of the house, he discovered a hiding place with his namesake's diary. The last entry was dated March 4, 1975. They returned, the tall blonde men. They stood on the hill and watched the ranch. Maria saw them too. The children are scared. Tomorrow, we will go to Rosario's before it's too late. What do they want? Why us? God, protect my family. They never managed to leave. On the morning of March 5th, the Hernandez family became the most famous victims of the zone of silence, a symbol of the inexplicable phenomenon that continues to claim people to this day. Their fate remains a mystery, like the fates of dozens of others who went into the desert and never returned. By the mid-1980s, the zone of silence began to attract attention beyond Mexico. Spreading rumors of a place where radios didn't work and mysterious disappearances occurred reached the United States. For American thrill seekers, the Mexican desert became a new destination for adventure tourism. Many of them never returned home. James Dawson, 42, an engineer from Dallas, and his wife Mary, 39, a schoolteacher, went on vacation to Mexico in March of 1985. It was their first trip abroad, a celebration of their 15th wedding anniversary. From the testimony of Rick Thompson, owner of the travel agency Southwest Adventures, the Dawsons wanted something unusual, not the beaches of Cancun, but an adventure. I told them about the zone of silence. Tourists love mystery. I arranged a guide, a rented Jeep, and a 3-day itinerary. I warned them about the safety precautions. Don't stray from the guide, always stay with the group, have a water supply. They seemed like responsible people. On March 12th, the couple flew into Ceballos, where they were met by a local guide, Carlos Villagomez. The plan was simple: 2 days in the zone with an overnight stay in tents, returning on March 14th. From the interrogation transcript of Carlos Villagomez, Mexican Police, March 16th. The first day went normally. We drove to the edge of the zone around noon. I showed them the rocket crash site, explained about the radio interference. They were thrilled, taking pictures of everything. Mr. Dawson checked the radio in the Jeep. It really didn't work. They laughed, saying it was incredible. We set up camp in a safe place, a few kilometers from the center of the zone. We had dinner, and I told them local legends. Mrs. Dawson asked about the missing people. I told them honestly that such cases had occurred, but with a guide, there was no danger. Senor Dawson was interested in the technical details, why the radio didn't work, what was wrong with the compasses. We slept peacefully through the night. On the morning of March 13th, we had breakfast and prepared to go deeper into the zone on foot. We left the Jeep at the camp. On March 13th at 10 a.m., the group set off on a walking tour toward the center of the anomalous zone. According to Vanishings, the first 2 hours went according to plan. We reached the place the locals call El Corazon, the heart of the zone. Here, the anomalies are strongest. Compasses spin, watches stop. The Dawsons were excited, taking notes. Senor James had brought some kind of device. He said it measured the magnetic field. At noon, we decided to head back. It was hot, over 40 degrees. We were walking back on a familiar path. Suddenly, I look back, and they're not there. A second ago, they were walking behind me, and suddenly they vanished. I shout, I call, silence. I run back along the path. No one. It was as if they had dissolved into thin air. Vanishings searched for the couple until dark, then returned to the camp, hoping they had found their own way back. On the morning of March 14th, when they did not return, he drove to Ceballos for help. A search operation began on March 15th. Local police, volunteers, and a Mexican Air Force helicopter were involved. The American consulate sent its own representatives. From the report of Police Captain Enrique Morales, we combed a 10-kilometer radius from the place of disappearance. We used search dogs, helicopter reconnaissance, and thermal imagers. We only found footprints that ended abruptly on a rocky patch of ground. No signs of violence, struggle, or animal attack. A strange detail, the tracks led directly to the center of the zone where the anomalies are strongest, a place where experienced locals never go. The disappearance of American citizens on Mexican territory caused a diplomatic stir. The U.S. Embassy demanded an expansion of the search operation and the involvement of American specialists. From a U.S. Embassy memorandum in Mexico City, declassified in 2015. The Dawson case requires special attention. The disappearance occurred in an area connected to the 1970 incident, the crash of the Athena rocket. Coordination with the Pentagon and the involvement of specialists in unusual phenomena is recommended. A connection to classified projects is possible. After 2 weeks of fruitless searching, the operation was concluded. The official finding: the tourists got lost in the desert and died of dehydration. The bodies are presumed to have been destroyed by scavengers. The Dawson family did not accept this explanation. James's brother, Thomas Dawson, a military engineer, flew to Mexico to conduct his own investigation. From his letter to a Texas congressman, the official version doesn't hold up. James was an experienced hiker, served in the Army, and knew how to survive in extreme conditions. They had enough water for 2 days. The distance to the camp was 3 kilometers. It's impossible to get lost. The local authorities are hiding something. They forbade me from visiting the site of the disappearance, citing a special regime for the territory. What special regime in the middle of a desert? I demand an official congressional investigation. In the spring of 1987, a group of students from a Texas university organized a trip for spring break. Unlike the usual trips to Cancun, they chose adventure tourism in northern Mexico. The group consisted of Brad Miller, 22, a geology student and the trip's organizer; Susan Clark, 20, studying journalism, who planned to write an article about the trip; Michael Johnson, 21, a physics student; Jennifer White, 19, studying anthropology; and Robert Bob Davis, 23, a final-year Spanish student. The preparation from Susan Clark's diary found in their car. March 15th. Brad showed us an article in a magazine about the Zone of Silence. It sounds creepy and exciting at the same time. A place where radios don't work, where people disappear without a trace. Professor Anderson said it's pseudoscience, but we don't care. I need a great story for the student newspaper. March 18th. We're planning the route. We fly into Ceballos, rent jeeps, go into the zone for 3 days. Bob is translating a Spanish guidebook for us. Michael is bringing all sorts of gadgets, says he'll check the magnetic anomalies. Jen is studying local mythology. March 20th. We fly out tomorrow. Our parents think we're going to the beaches of Mazatlan. If only they knew. But we're adults, we can take care of ourselves. What could happen in 3 days? On March 21st, the group flew into Ceballos. At the airport, they were met by a guide, Pedro Morena, who had been working with tourist groups since the early 80s. From the testimony of Pedro Morena, it was immediately clear they were young and inexperienced, thinking it was some kind of adventure game. I explained the rules. Don't wander from the group. Don't enter the central zone without me. Always have a walkie-talkie. They laughed, saying I was exaggerating the danger. We spent the first day on the edge of the zone. I showed them the main sites, the rocket crash site. The student with the gadgets, Michael, got very excited, saying the readings were impossible. The journalism girl wrote everything down in her notebook. In the evening at the camp, I told them stories about the missing people. They listened as if they were fairy tales. Only Robert, who spoke Spanish, understood the seriousness. He translated my warnings to the others. On March 23rd, the second day of the expedition, an incident occurred that would predetermine the tragedy. I woke up in the morning, and 4 of the students were gone. Only Robert was left at the camp. He said the others had gone to watch the sunrise at a beautiful spot they had seen the evening before. It was about 3 kilometers away, deep inside the zone. I told Robert we had to go find them immediately. We took the walkie-talkies and water and followed their tracks. We reached the spot, a high hill with a view of the valley. The tracks led to the top, but there was no one on the summit. We started to descend the other side of the hill. Robert was the first to notice it. Susan's backpack was lying at the foot of the rocks. Nearby was Jennifer's camera, smashed. But the students themselves were gone. An inspection of the scene revealed strange details that defied conventional explanations. From the Mexican police report, the personal belongings of 4 missing American tourists have been discovered. Susan Clark's backpack with personal items and documents. Jennifer White's camera, damaged from a fall. Michael Johnson's scientific instruments scattered within a 20-meter radius. Brad Miller's jacket, neatly folded on a rock. Strange circumstances. The items are scattered chaotically, but there are no signs of a struggle. Valuables, watches, money, jewelry are untouched. Footprints end at the edge of a cliff, but there is no one below. The film in the camera is completely overexposed. The hypothesis of a fall from the cliff is ruled out. The height is 15 meters. The cliffs have been searched, and there are no bodies. Robert Davis was the only witness. His testimony became key to understanding what happened. From an interview with an FBI psychologist on March 28th, Robert is in a state of shock, but his testimony is coherent. He claims his friends disappeared before his eyes. He describes strange phenomena, a sudden blurring of the air, sounds without a source, a feeling of an alien presence. There are no physical injuries, but signs of severe psychological stress are observed. He insists on the truthfulness of his words and asks that no one else be sent to that place. Long-term psychological rehabilitation is recommended. The disappearance of 4 American students became international news. The story hit the front pages of U.S. newspapers and sparked a diplomatic crisis between Mexico and the United States. From an editorial in the Dallas Morning News, the Mexican authorities cannot ensure the safety of American tourists. 4 young lives have been lost due to the negligence of local guides and the inadequate work of search services. The State Department must revise travel agreements and issue warnings for travel to dangerous regions. The families of the missing students organized a campaign to pressure the government. Brad Miller's parents hired a private detective. Susan Clark's family contacted their state's congressman. From a letter to Texas, Senator Lloyd Benson: Dear Senator, our children have disappeared on Mexican territory under circumstances that the authorities cannot or will not explain. The official version of an accident in the desert does not match the facts. We demand the creation of a joint U.S.-Mexico commission to investigate the disappearances in the so-called Zone of Silence. By the end of the 80s, the Zone of Silence had attracted the attention of major media. National Geographic was planning an article on the planet's mysterious places, and the editors decided to send one of their best photojournalists to Mexico. Robert Stone, 35, a veteran of the magazine with 15 years of experience, had worked in the most dangerous parts of the world. He had photographed wars in Afghanistan and Nicaragua, expeditions in Antarctica, and volcanic eruptions in Indonesia. He was considered one of the most experienced extreme photographers. From a National Geographic editorial note, February 1990. Robert Stone's assignment to Mexico has been approved. Topic: The Zone of Silence, Myths and Reality. Duration: 10 days. Budget: $15,000. Robert insists on maximum autonomy. He will work with a local guide. Minimal support. Preliminary research shows real physical anomalies mixed with local superstitions. The task is to separate scientific facts from folklore and to obtain high-quality photographs of unusual phenomena. Stone prepared meticulously for the expedition, studying all available materials, contacting scientists, and consulting with colleagues who had worked in Mexico. On March 5, 1990, Stone flew into Ceballos. He was met by a guide, Ramon Castillo, who was recommended by Mexican colleagues as the most experienced guide in the region. From the diary of Robert Stone: March 6th, the first day in the zone exceeded expectations. The anomalies are real and impressive. The compass really doesn't work. Radio communication disappears. I got some excellent shots of the dead zone. No birds, no insects. A creepy kind of beauty. Ramon is an excellent guide, knows every stone. He warns about the dangers, but doesn't interfere with my work. He says strange things happen in the central part of the zone. Tomorrow, we plan to reach the epicenter. March 7th. Incredible shots. In the center of the zone, the temperature dropped by 15 degrees for no apparent reason. All metal objects became magnetized. The film in one camera was exposed by itself. The phenomenon requires study. Ramon is acting strangely, constantly looking around, muttering something in Spanish. When I ask, he answers evasively. Does he feel something that I don't notice? On March 8th, Stone planned to spend the night in the central part of the zone to shoot the starry sky. This was his last diary entry. March 8th evening. Camp is a kilometer from the epicenter. Ramon refused to spend the night here. He went back to the car. I'm alone, but I'm not afraid. I've shot in more dangerous places. The sky is incredible. No light pollution. The stars are like jewels. I've set up the cameras for a long exposure. If I'm lucky, I'll get unique shots. 10:30 p.m. Something strange is happening. Sounds without a source, like distant voices. The temperature continues to drop. The compass is spinning like crazy. I might be observing an active phase of the anomaly. I'm continuing to shoot. 11:45 p.m. A glow on the horizon, greenish, pulsating. I've never seen anything like it. I'm changing lenses, shooting from different angles. This could be a discovery. 12:15 a.m. The glow is getting closer, or I am getting closer to it. A feeling of disorientation. The voices are getting louder. I can make out words, English and Spanish. Someone is calling for help. I'm going towards the sound. On March 9th, Ramon Castillo did not find Stone at their agreed-upon meeting place. By evening, worried by the photographer's absence, he went to the camp. From the testimony of Ramon Castillo, "I found the camp empty. The tent was up, things were in place, but Senor Stone was gone. The cameras were lying around the extinguished campfire. Some were on, the batteries were dead. In one, the film had been shot to the end. I searched until dark, shouting, firing into the air. Silence. I didn't dare spend the night in that place. I went back to the road. In the morning, I brought the police." The search operation began on March 11th. Mexican police, American consular services, and a team from National Geographic joined the search. From the search party's report, Stone's camp was found untouched, discovered a full set of photo equipment, 5 cameras, lenses, tripods, personal belongings and documents, a diary with entries up to March 8th, and used film rolls, most of which were overexposed, a sleeping bag that had not been slept in. Stone's tracks led from the camp in a northern direction for 200 meters, then disappear on a rocky patch. An aerial search yielded no results. The film rolls found in Stone's camp were sent to the National Geographic Laboratory. The results of the analysis were unexpected. From the technical report, 847 frames were developed. Results: 623 frames were completely overexposed. 158 frames were partially damaged. 66 frames were preserved. The preserved frames show landscapes of the zone, standard documentary photography, strange light anomalies on the horizon. The last frames, blurry silhouettes of an indefinite shape. One frame shows a structure resembling an artificial construction. The damage to the film does not correspond to exposure to sunlight or radiation. The cause of the overexposure is unknown. The disappearance of one of its leading photographers was a blow to the magazine's reputation. The editorial board was forced to explain itself to the board of directors and the Stone family. From an internal memorandum, "The Stone case calls into question our policy on assignments to dangerous regions. It is recommended to, first, suspend work on the article about the zone of silence. Second, strengthen security measures for photojournalists. Third, avoid topics related to paranormal phenomena. Fourth, consider the possibility of life insurance for employees working in extreme conditions." Robert Stone's wife, Helen, did not believe the official version of an accident. She hired a private detective and demanded an independent investigation. From the report of the detective agency, Southwest Investigations. Analysis of the circumstances of Robert Stone's disappearance reveals the following. Stone was an experienced professional, not prone to reckless acts. The location of the disappearance has a history of similar incidents. The Mexican authorities are not interested in an investigation. Witnesses, local residents, avoid giving testimony. Conclusions. The official version is unconvincing. Additional investigation with the involvement of American specialists is required. Referral to the FBI for an international investigation is recommended. By 1990, the statistics on the disappearance of American citizens in the Zone of Silence region had become a matter of concern for the authorities of both countries. A summary from the U.S. State Department. Period 1985 to 1990. Missing American citizens in the Bolson de Mapimi region. 1985, James and Mary Dawson. 1987, Brad Miller, Susan Clark, Michael Johnson, Jennifer White. 1990, Robert Stone. In total, 7 people in 5 years. For comparison, in the rest of the state of Coahuila during the same period, 2 Americans went missing, and both were found within a week. The growing number of disappearances forced U.S. and Mexican authorities to attempt to coordinate their efforts. In 1988, a joint working group was established. From the minutes of a meeting in El Paso, participants, representatives of the FBI, the Mexican Federal Police, and consular services. Agenda: coordination of search and rescue operations in border areas. Conclusions: It is necessary to strengthen warning measures for tourists, create a rapid response system, exchange information on missing citizens, and study the possibility of declaring part of the zone closed to visitors. A dissenting opinion from the FBI. A special investigation into the circumstances of the disappearances in the anomalous zone is required. The Mexican authorities were not prepared for the international attention on the Zone of Silence. Tourism brought in revenue, and rumors of danger could harm the region's economy. From a letter from the governor of Coahuila to the federal government. Inflating hysteria around isolated accidents in the desert damages the state's image. The American media presents our region as a cursed place, which scares off tourists. It is recommended to minimize publicity of incidents, strengthen control over the activities of guides, restrict journalists' access to remote areas, and develop alternative tourist routes. Some of the documents related to the disappearances of Americans were classified. Materials declassified in the 2010s shed light on the hidden aspects of the investigations. From a CIA document declassified in 2015. The Zone of Silence case requires special attention from a national security perspective. The disappearances of American citizens in the area of the Athena rocket crash may be related to unidentified effects of experimental weapons, the activities of Soviet agents in the region, or attempts by Mexican authorities to hide traces of a military incident. Recommendations: classify all materials related to the rocket's technical specifications. Restrict American citizens' access to the zone under the pretext of environmental danger. Establish covert surveillance of the territory. In 2018, witness testimonies that had previously been classified as secret were also declassified. The testimony of U.S. Air Force Major Daniel Wright, retired 1995. In 1988, I received an order to conduct a reconnaissance flight over Mexican territory. Officially, it was a cartographic survey. In reality, it was surveillance of our rocket's crash zone. At an altitude of 3,000 meters, I encountered inexplicable phenomena. The instruments failed simultaneously. Radio communication was lost for 15 minutes. The compass showed the wrong direction. The engines ran erratically. The strangest thing was, through my binoculars, I saw structures below that shouldn't be in the desert. Geometrically perfect shapes, like artificial constructions. In the report, I wrote geological formations, but I knew it wasn't true. After the flight, I was summoned to headquarters and ordered to forget everything I saw. I signed a non-disclosure agreement for a term of 30 years. A comparative analysis of all the cases of disappearing American tourists revealed alarming patterns from a 1991 FBI analytical memo. Common characteristics of disappearances in the Zone of Silence. First, suddenness. All victims disappeared instantly without warning signs. Second, the absence of signs of struggle or violence. Third, personal belongings, including valuables, left behind. Fourth, the disappearance occurs near the center of the anomalous zone. Fifth, the ineffectiveness of search and rescue operations. Sixth, strange witness accounts of light phenomena and voices. Statistical analysis. 100% of disappearances occur within a 5-kilometer radius of the rocket crash site. 85% of cases are accompanied by testimonies of unusual phenomena. 0% successful search and rescue operations. The average age of the victims is 28. The male-to-female ratio is 60-40. Preliminary conclusion. The disappearances are not random, nor are they the result of ordinary causes such as getting lost, accidents, or crime. A special investigation with the involvement of experts in anomalous phenomena is required. By the end of the 80s, both countries were attempting to reduce the number of incidents without drawing undue attention to the problem. From a 1989 State Department circular to travel agencies. In connection with the increasing number of accidents in remote areas of northern Mexico, it is recommended to inform tourists of the heightened danger of travel in the desert regions of the states of Chihuahua, Durango, and Coahuila. Recommend alternative routes with developed infrastructure. Require clients to provide written confirmation of their awareness of the risks. Ensure tourists are equipped with reliable means of communication. Pay special attention to the Bolson de Mapimi region, where a number of tourist disappearances have been recorded. Mexican authorities developed their own strategy for managing the situation. From an internal document of the Mexican Secretariat of Tourism, the problem of the zone of silence requires a delicate approach. On the one hand, the mystical stories attract a certain category of tourists. On the other hand, the real disappearances create a negative image. The recommended strategy is to develop safe, mystical tourism on the periphery of the zone, restrict access to the central part under the pretext of environmental protection, strengthen control over the activities of guides, create alternative attractions in the region, and minimize media coverage of real incidents. Parallel to the official measures, a network of informal warnings existed among guides, hotel owners, and local residents. From a 2010 interview with Carlos Hernandez, a hotel owner in Ceballos. We all knew the truth about the zone. Guides told each other what happens there. By the end of the 80s, none of the experienced guides would take tourists to the center. Only newcomers or the desperate. Americans often asked for real adventures, offered big money, but life is more precious than money. I always told the guides I knew, it's better to refuse a job than to lose a client in that cursed zone. The authorities didn't support us. They said, don't scare the tourist with fairy tales. But we saw how many people never came back. These are not fairy tales. By 1990, the alarming statistics had accumulated, forcing a reassessment of the approach to the problem. A summary report from the U.S.-Mexico Joint Working Group. Period, 1985 to 1990. Results. Confirmed disappearances of American citizens, 7 people. Suspicious cases with insufficient evidence, 3. Successful rescue operations, 0. Bodies found, 0. Economic damage to the tourism industry, $2.5 million. Diplomatic notes of protest, 12. Lawsuits against travel agencies, 4. Conclusions. Traditional methods of ensuring tourist safety in this region are ineffective. A radical revision of approaches is required, possibly including the complete closure of the territory to visitors. By the early 1990s, the disappearance of American tourists in the zone of silence had become part of the official diplomatic agenda. The mystery that began with the rocket crash in 1970 had taken on an international character. The families of the missing formed an organization, Families for Truth, which lobbied for the creation of an international investigative commission. Their slogan became the words, 7 Americans vanished in the Mexican desert. We demand answers. But there were no answers. The zone of silence continued to keep its secrets, and the list of the missing continued to grow. The American tourists became just one page in the grim chronicle of a place that seemed to be specifically created for people to disappear without a trace. In the archives of both countries, folders piled up, stamped with the same conclusion. Case closed for lack of a crime. But for the families of the missing, these cases were never closed. They continued to wait for their loved ones who had walked into the desert and dissolved into the silence of the zone of silence. Against the backdrop of numerous permanent disappearances, the rare cases of people who went missing but later returned take on special significance. Their testimonies became the only source of information about what happens to people on the other side of the anomaly. The medical conclusions and psychiatric evaluations of these witnesses paint a picture no less frightening than the disappearances themselves. The case of Ernesto Diaz. Ernesto Diaz, 34 years old, a truck driver from Ceballos, disappeared on June 7, 1982, during a convoy run. The route passed along the periphery of the Zone of Silence, a road that local drivers avoided but which was 40 kilometers shorter. From the highway police report, the truck of Ernesto Diaz, a Ford F600, license plate DG4721, was discovered on June 8 at 7:30 a.m. on the shoulder of the Ceballos-Colón Road, 23 kilometers from Ceballos. The engine was running, the headlights were on, there was fuel in the tank. The driver was absent. Strange circumstances. The cargo, bags of cement, was untouched. Documents and money were in place. The cab door was open, keys in the ignition. Next to the truck were bare footprints leading into the desert. According to his family, Ernesto Diaz always wore shoes. The direction of the tracks was northeast, towards the center of the Zone of Silence. Diaz's family immediately organized a search. They were joined by fellow drivers, friends, and neighbors. They combed the desert for 2 days without result. From the diary of Maria Diaz, the missing man's wife. June 8th. Ernesto didn't come back from his run. I called all the gas stations along the route. No one has seen him. The police found his truck, but without him. What could have happened? Ernesto knows these roads like the back of his hand. June 9th. We've been searching for a second day. We reached the place where the tracks end. There's a strange feeling, as if the air is different there. My son Miguel says his watch stopped. The old people are whispering about the cursed place. June 10th. The police have stopped the search. They say he went too far into the desert, got lost, and died of thirst. But the cargo was untouched. Why would he go into the desert, abandoning his job? On the morning of June 11th, 3 days after he disappeared, Ernesto Diaz was found lying on the road 50 kilometers from where he went missing. Another truck driver heading to Ceballos found him. The account of Juan Morales, the man who found Diaz. I was driving at dawn and saw a man lying on the road. I stopped, walked over. It was Ernesto Diaz. I know him. We sometimes drove in convoys together. He was alive but strange, lying in just his underwear, barefoot, dirty. His eyes were open, but he wasn't reacting. I shook him. He didn't answer. Only when I gave him water did he come to. He looked at me like I was a ghost. He said, "Juan, is it really you? I'm back." I put him in my cab and brought him to the hospital. The whole way he muttered something about gray people and a white light. I thought it was heat stroke, that he was delirious from the heat. At the Ceballos hospital, Ernesto Diaz underwent a full medical examination. The results puzzled the doctors. Medical report from the medical chart of Dr. Rafael Mendez. Patient, Ernesto Diaz, age 34. Diagnosis upon admission: dehydration, heat stroke, disorientation. Objective data: a weight loss of 8 kilograms in 3 days, which is physiologically impossible without critical dehydration. The skin showed first-degree burns all over the body, as if from ultraviolet light, but in patterns inconsistent with sun exposure. Neurological state: partial amnesia and impaired coordination. Blood tests revealed elevated levels of metals, specifically copper and zinc, with no apparent source. Inexplicable features: no clinical signs of dehydration despite the stated weight loss. Body temperature was 2 degrees below normal. Pupils were dilated, but reaction to light was preserved. Traces of an unidentified substance were found on his palms and feet. Psychiatric observation and further tests were recommended. When Ernesto Diaz came to his senses, his testimony shocked the medical staff and the police. From the interrogation transcript, June 12th. Police: tell us what happened on June 7th. Diaz: I was driving my usual route around 9 o'clock at night. I noticed a strange light ahead on the road. I thought it was an accident, a car on fire. I stopped to look. Police: what did you see? Diaz: there was no accident. A light was hanging in the air, bright and white. It hurt to look at. I wanted to turn around, but the engine stalled. After that, I don't remember clearly. Police. What do you remember? Diaz. I got out of the cab. The light got brighter. It came down to the ground. People came out of it, tall, in white clothes. I couldn't see their faces. The light was too bright. They were talking, but not with their mouths. The words just appeared in my head. Police. What did they talk about? Diaz. They asked about me, where I was from, where I was going, why. I answered, even though I didn't open my mouth. Then they said, "Come with us?" And I went. I couldn't not go. Police. Where did you go? Diaz. Into the light. It was a different place in there. Not the desert. White walls, a lot of light, silence. People in white walked back and forth. They put me on a table, did something. It wasn't painful, but it was terrifying. Police. How long were you there? Diaz. I don't know. There was no time there. Maybe an hour, maybe a week. Then they said, "Go back." And I found myself on the road. Diaz's testimony was so unusual that he was sent for a psychiatric evaluation at the San Luis Potosi Hospital. Psychiatric evaluation conclusion by Dr. Isabel Vargas, psychiatrist. The patient exhibits signs of post-traumatic stress disorder with elements of a dissociative disorder. However, the clinical picture does not fit standard criteria. Peculiarities. The testimony is coherent, detailed, and without contradictions. There are no signs of psychosis or delusional disorders. The patient is critical of his own memories. Emotional reactions are appropriate to the severity of the experience. There are no signs of malingering or conscious deception. Additional observations. Unusual electroencephalography, EEG readings. Impaired short-term memory with preserved long-term memory. Heightened sensitivity to electromagnetic fields. Persistent sleep disturbances with vivid, recurring dreams. Diagnosis: acute stress disorder of unknown etiology. Recommendations: long-term psychotherapy, medication support, and outpatient observation. Ernesto Diaz returned to a normal life, but the changes were noticeable to everyone around him. From a 1990 interview with his wife, Maria Diaz, he came back a different man. On the outside, he was the same, but something had changed. He became quiet, thoughtful. He often wakes up at night saying he hears voices. He doesn't drink or smoke. He used to love having a beer with friends. The main thing is, he's afraid of electricity. He can't turn on the radio or the television. He says they're screaming at him. During thunderstorms, he hides in the cellar and trembles like a child. The doctors can't explain anything. And one more thing. Sometimes he knows things he shouldn't know. He predicts the weather, says when someone will get sick. The neighbors whisper that he's marked. I don't know what to think. Doctors continued to observe Ernesto Diaz for 10 years. His case became unique in the region's medical practice. From a long-term medical conclusion, 1992. A 10-year observation of patient Diaz reveals persistent changes in his organism. Physiological changes. Basal body temperature is consistently 1.5 to 2 degrees below normal. Altered reaction to electromagnetic fields. Accelerated healing processes. Wounds heal twice as fast. Disrupted circadian rhythms. Neurological peculiarities. Hypersensitivity to sounds of specific frequencies. Unusual electrical activity in the brain. Spontaneous bouts of clairvoyance. 23 documented cases. Persistent sleep disturbances. Biochemical anomalies. Elevated content of rare metals in the blood. Altered composition of cerebrospinal fluid. Anomalous enzyme activity. Conclusion. The observed changes do not correspond to any known medical condition. The etiology is undetermined. The patient is functionally adapted but requires continuous observation. The case of Maria Santos. Maria Santos, 27 years old, an elementary school teacher from Gomez Palacio, disappeared on May 18, 1991, during a trip to visit her sick aunt in Escalon. From her personnel file, Maria Concepcion Santos Rebolleda. Education, higher in pedagogy. Has been working at the Benito Juarez School for 4 years. Characterized as a responsible, punctual employee. Married to Carlos Santos. No children. Religious, actively participates in parish life. Maria left Gomez Palacio on a Saturday morning in her Volkswagen Beetle. The drive to Escalon usually took an hour and a half. When she hadn't arrived by evening, her relatives became alarmed. The account of her aunt, Rosa Hernandez. Maria called on Friday and said she would arrive Saturday morning. I was sick, and she wanted to bring medicine and food. She is a very punctual girl, never late. By evening, I got worried and called her home. Her husband said she had left in the morning. I called everyone along the road. No one had seen her. That night, I called the police. They said, wait until tomorrow. Maybe she was delayed. On Sunday morning, a search party found Maria's car on the side of the road, 15 kilometers from Escalon, on a stretch that passed through the edge of the zone of silence. From the scene inspection report, a white Volkswagen Beetle, license plate DJ8834, was discovered at 8:45 a.m. on Highway 127 from Gomez Palacio to Escalon. The car is on the shoulder, engine off, keys in the ignition. Vehicle condition, sufficient fuel in the tank, no technical malfunctions detected. Her purse and documents were on the front seat. Groceries and medicine in the trunk were untouched. The doors were locked. Traces and clues. A woman's shoe prints lead from the car in a northern direction. The tracks extend for approximately 200 meters to a rocky area. Maria Santos's scarf was found snagged on a bush. No signs of a struggle or coercion were found. The search continued all day, Saturday and Sunday. By Monday morning, Maria Santos was officially declared a missing person. It was then that her unexpected return occurred. From the report of Patrol Sergeant Luis Aguilar, on May 19th at 6:30 a.m., I received a report of a woman sitting by the road near kilometer marker 125. I arrived at the scene and found Maria Santos in a state of disorientation. Condition of the found person. She was sitting on a rock by the road in the same clothes she had disappeared in. No physical injuries. She responded to address, but was lethargic. She answered questions in monosyllables. She did not remember how she ended up by the road. I transported her to the Escalon Hospital for a medical examination. At the Escalon Hospital, Maria underwent an initial examination, which revealed anomalies similar to the case of Ernesto Diaz. From the attending physician's conclusion, patient Maria Santos, 27 years old, was admitted with complaints of weakness and memory lapses after a 24-hour absence. Objective data. General condition is satisfactory. Body temperature is 35.8 degrees Celsius, below normal. Pulse is 52 beats per minute, bradycardia. Blood pressure is normal. Pupils are dilated. Reaction to light is slow. Unusual findings. Traces of burns of unknown origin on the palms. Temporary hearing loss at high frequencies. Impaired short-term memory. Heightened sensitivity to bright light. Recommendation: transfer to a specialized department for further examination. In the week following her return, Maria's memory gradually recovered. Her statements were recorded by the hospital's psychiatrist. From a session with Dr. Elena Ramirez on May 23rd. The patient recounts her memories in fragments using a technique of guided recall under light sedation. Fragment 1. Stopping the car. I was driving on the usual road. Suddenly the radio started hissing, then went silent. The engine started running rough. I stopped on the shoulder and got out to look. It was very quiet. Not even any wind. Fragment 2. The appearance of the light. A light appeared over the desert. At first it was small, like a star. Then it got bigger. It was moving toward me. I wanted to get in the car and drive away, but I couldn't move. My body wouldn't obey. Fragment 3. Contact. The light landed next to me. There were silhouettes inside. Did they come out? No, they didn't come out. They appeared next to me. Tall, thin. I couldn't see their faces. The light was too bright. One of them held out a hand, and I took it. The hand was cold, like metal. Fragment 4. The translocation. We walked. No, we didn't walk. We were instantly in another place. White walls, a lot of light, but it didn't hurt my eyes. The air was different, sweetish, like after a rain. They laid me down on something soft. Fragment 5. The procedures. They were doing something to me, looking, touching. It wasn't painful, but it was unpleasant. One of them held a glowing object in his hands and moved it over my body. They were talking to each other, but I didn't hear voices. The words just appeared in my head. Fragment 6. The return. Then they said, "It's time." I was by the road again. I don't remember how. I was sitting on a rock and didn't understand where I was. The sun was already rising. A detailed psychiatric examination of Maria Santos continued for a month. The results were ambiguous. From the final conclusion of Dr. Ramirez, the case of Maria Santos presents a unique clinical picture. The patient shows signs of a traumatic experience, but the structure of her memories does not correspond to typical mental disorders. Psychological tests. IQ is within the normal range at 112. Reality testing is normal. No signs of psychosis or schizophrenia. Emotional stability is preserved. Critical thinking is not impaired. Anomalous manifestations, hypermnesia regarding certain details, spontaneous trance-like states, unusual sensory experiences, changes in time perception. Conclusion. The observed symptomatology does not correspond to any known psychiatric diagnosis. Long-term observation and additional research are recommended. Maria Santos returned to work a month after the incident, but the changes in her behavior were noticeable to colleagues and students. From the School Principal's Evaluation, 1992. Maria Santos remains a valuable employee, but peculiarities have appeared in her work. Children note that she knows their thoughts and can predict their behavior. Colleagues notice an unusual intuition in pedagogical situations. Positive changes. Increased empathy for children, an unusual ability to concentrate, improved learning outcomes in her class. Negative aspects. Periodic bouts of detachment, avoidance of noisy events, heightened sensitivity to electronic devices. Recommendation: to continue working with limitations on workload. Regular medical checkups revealed physiological changes in Maria similar to those observed in Ernesto Diaz. From the Medical Observation Chart, 1991 to 1995. Patient Santos demonstrates persistent changes in her organism. Temperature regulation. Basal temperature is stable at 1.5 degrees below normal. Lack of reaction to ambient temperature fluctuations. Improved thermoregulation. Neurological changes. Altered sleep structure. REM phase increased by 40%. Increased activity in the parietal lobe of the brain. Unusual electroencephalogram, EEG patterns. Hypersensitivity to electromagnetic fields. Biochemical indicators. Increased content of trace elements in the blood. Altered hormonal profile. Accelerated tissue regeneration processes. Immunological peculiarities. Increased resistance to infectious diseases. Unusual reaction to vaccination. Altered lymphocyte composition. Conclusion: the observed changes are systemic in nature and have no analogues in medical literature. By the mid-1990s, researchers had enough data to conduct a comparative analysis of cases of people who had returned from the zone of silence. From a scientific report of the Mexican Institute of Neurology, 1995. An analysis of documented cases of return from the anomalous zone, 7 people in the period from 1980 to 1994, reveals stable patterns. Shared characteristics. Circumstances of disappearance. 100% of cases occurred while the person was alone. 85% occurred in the evening or at night. 71% were accompanied by the observation of light phenomena. 57% involved the failure of vehicle or radio equipment. Duration of absence. The minimum was 18 hours. The maximum was 4 days, with an average of 2.3 days. A pattern emerged. A longer absence correlated with more severe consequences. Memories. 100% remembered a bright light. 86% described tall beings. 71% recalled medical-like procedures. 57% reported telepathic contact. Physiological changes. A decrease in basal body temperature, 100%. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity, 86%. Accelerated tissue regeneration, 71%. Disrupted sleep and circadian rhythms, 100%. Psychological consequences. Enhanced intuition, 100%. Periodic trance-like states, 71%. Avoidance of electronic devices, 86%. Increased empathy, 100%. From a collective article in the Revista Mexicana de Medicina, 1996. The zone of silence syndrome, a proposed name, represents a complex of physiological and psychological changes observed in individuals subjected to an unidentified factor in the anomalous zone. Possible etiological factors include exposure to an unknown type of radiation, psychogenic factors under extreme stress, exposure to natural psychotropic substances, or changes in the magnetic field affecting brain activity. The clinical manifestations correspond to a combination of radiation sickness, but without typical symptoms, post-traumatic stress disorder, but with atypical manifestations, and neurological changes of an undetermined nature. Recommendations: the creation of a specialized center to study the phenomenon, the development of treatment and rehabilitation protocols, long-term observation of affected individuals, and a prohibition on visiting the zone until the nature of the exposure is clarified. The Controlled Contact Experiment. In 1994, a group of volunteers from the University of Guadalajara attempted a scientific replication of the conditions under which the disappearances and returns occurred. From the experiment protocol, Expedition Controlled Contact, October 12th to 15th, 1994. Participants: 4 volunteers, students and graduate students, 2 observers, and a medical team. Goal: to conduct nighttime observation in the central part of the zone to record anomalous phenomena. Experiment plan: establish a camp 500 meters from the anomaly's epicenter. Conduct round-the-clock observation using instruments. Medically monitor the participants. Photo and video record all events. Immediate evacuation if danger arises. Day 1 passed without incident. On day 2, electronic equipment failed at 11:40 p.m. On day 3, at 2:15 a.m., student Ricardo Jimenez reported observing a light phenomenon. 20 minutes later, he disappeared from the camp. The search for Jimenez continued until dawn without result. The experiment was terminated prematurely. Ricardo Jimenez was found 8 hours after his disappearance, 3 kilometers from the camp. His case became the most well-documented due to the scientific observation. Immediate medical conclusion: patient Ricardo Jimenez, 22 years old, psychology student. Condition upon discovery: confused consciousness, disoriented in space and time. Objective data: body temperature 34.2 degrees Celsius, pulse 48 beats per minute, blood pressure 90/60 millimeters of mercury, pupils dilated, photoreaction reduced. Peculiarities: traces of an undetermined nature on the body. Metal objects, watch, ring, were magnetized. Dosimeter reading showed a background radiation level 2.5 times higher than normal. Unusual electrical activity on the skin. Memories were fragmented, a white light, tall figures, metallic sounds. A unique feature of this experiment was that biological samples had been taken beforehand, allowing for a comparative analysis of the changes. The comparison of Hernandez's analyses before and after the exposure yielded unique scientific data. Laboratory report, comparative analysis. Blood. A change in the composition of trace elements. The content of rare metals, iridium and rhodium, increased by 50 to 100 times. The appearance of unidentified protein structures. Altered enzyme activity. DNA modification in 0.3% of cells. The nature of the changes is unknown. Hair. A change in the crystal structure, the inclusion of metallic nanoparticles, increased conductivity. Saliva, new enzymes not found in nature. Altered pH, traces of inorganic compounds. Conclusion: the observed changes cannot be explained by exposure to known physical or chemical factors. Further research is required. Hernandez agreed to extensive psychological testing for the sake of science. From the report of psychologist Dr. Marta Gonzalez, conducted a week after the incident. Cognitive functions, IQ increased from 118 to 142. Significant improvement in spatial reasoning. Increased information processing speed, unusual ability to concentrate. Sensory changes, expansion of the audible frequency range, increased sensitivity to light, new types of synesthesia, seeing sounds, the ability to feel electromagnetic fields, emotional sphere, increased empathy, periodic states of detachment, intrusive memories of the contact, a change in the value system, paranormal manifestations, 15 documented cases of precognition, the ability to influence electronic devices, telepathic episodes verified under controlled conditions. Conclusion: the observed changes go beyond the scope of known psychological science. By the mid-1990s, the cases of return from the zone of silence had attracted the attention of Mexican intelligence services. Secret programs were created to study the phenomenon. From a document from the Center for National Intelligence, declassified in 2018, Operation Return. Goal: to study individuals who were exposed to the anomalous zone. Tasks: medical examination of all contactees, psychological testing and observation, study of their new abilities, and assessment of their potential for the intelligence services. Results: 1995-2000. 12 people were examined. 100% showed physiological anomalies. 83% were found to have paranormal abilities. 4 individuals were recruited for collaboration. 2 attempts at repeated exposure were made. They were unsuccessful. Conclusions: the phenomenon is real and reproducible. The nature of the exposure has not been established. The changes to the body are irreversible. Military application is possible. Recommendations: classify all research, restrict access to the zone, and continue observation of the contactees. International cooperation. American intelligence agencies also took an interest in the phenomenon. In 1997, a joint program was established. From partially declassified CIA documents, Project Zona Research, participants, CIA, Mexican CNI, and independent researchers. Budget, $2.3 million, 1997 to 2002. Tasks: to study the nature of the anomaly in the zone of silence, to analyze the physiological changes in the affected individuals, to assess the possibility of utilizing the phenomenon, to develop methods of protection against the exposure. Main directions: medical research on contactees, physical measurements in the anomalous zone, attempts to reproduce the effects in a laboratory setting, and the development of theoretical models. Preliminary results: classified. Practical applications: classified. Recommendations for further action: classified. Parallel to the secret research, attempts were made to help the victims adapt. From a 1998 report from a rehabilitation center for contactees of the Zone of Silence, patients, 18 people from 1995 to 1998. Treatment methods: medication therapy, limited effectiveness; psychotherapy, adaptation to new abilities; physical therapy, normalization of biorhythms; and social rehabilitation. Results: full recovery, 0 cases; significant improvement, 3 people, 16.7%. Stabilization of condition, 12 people, 66.7%. Worsening of condition, 3 people, 16.7%. Conclusions: the changes are irreversible. Only adaptation is possible, not elimination of the effects. Some patients show positive dynamics. Specialized techniques need to be developed. By the 2000s, data had accumulated on the long-term consequences. From a 2005 medical study, 20-year observation of surviving contactees, 14 people. Physical health: average life expectancy exceeds the population average by 15 to 20%. Cancer cases, 0. Cardiovascular diseases are 60% lower than average. Infectious diseases are rare and mild. Overall conclusion: improved physical health. Mental state: depressive disorders are 21% below the population level. Anxiety disorders are 35% within the normal range. Social adaptation is difficult for 43%. 78% work in helping professions. Paranormal abilities: maintained in 92% throughout the observation period. They may intensify over time. Transmitted to offspring in 30% of cases. Preliminary data. Social status: 64% are married, above average. Average income is 25% below the population average. 43% are actively involved in community activities. 71% avoid technical professions. The community of survivors. By the end of the 90s, the survivors began to unite for mutual support. From the charter of the organization Circulo de Luz, Circle of Light, 1999. We, the people who have survived contact in the Zone of Silence, unite for mutual support and understanding, to study our new abilities, to help other victims, to seek answers to questions about our experience, and to protect ourselves from discrimination and misunderstanding. The organization's principles include confidentiality of personal data, mutual respect, refusal to commercially use their abilities, cooperation with scientific research, and a focus on spiritual development. The testimonies of the survivors from the Zone of Silence remain one of the most enigmatic phenomena of our time. Their stories not only shed light on the nature of the anomaly, but also raise fundamental questions about the capabilities of the human body and consciousness. Ernesto Diaz, the first documented survivor, died in 2018 at the age of 70. Until his final days, he retained his unusual abilities and clarity of mind. His last words, recorded by his wife: "They are still watching. The zone is waiting, but not everyone is ready for what it can give." Maria Santos continues to work as a teacher. Her class shows record-breaking academic results. She keeps a diary of her abilities, which will become an invaluable document for future researchers. Ricardo Jimenez became a neurobiologist and dedicated his life to studying altered states of consciousness. His work has received international recognition, though he never revealed the true source of his interest in the subject. The Círculo de Luz continues its activities, uniting more than 40 people who have experienced contact with the anomaly. They remain living witnesses to a mystery that could change our understanding of human nature. But most importantly, their experience proves that it is possible to return from the zone of silence. The question is, who do you become after you return? And is the world ready to accept this new version of you?